So good afternoon, everyone. It is great to be here today. We are going to be looking at options with your science degree. And so before we actually start, just to let you know what is being planned for this week, on Thursday, we have a career conversation, which is my career in climate change. For those of you that are interested, it's a transdisciplinary event, which is going to be touching on climate change. So really great if we could see some of you there. And then on Friday, we have a CV lag specifically targeted to our science students. You will only be able to book for your consultation from Wednesday onwards. So just to be aware of that. So let us start. So what are we actually going to be covering today? So in order to know or to understand your options with your degree, you first have to understand what actually makes you employable. So we'll touch on key aspects to employability. We'll also have to kind of look at and understand your skill set that you have before we take a deep dive into looking at your discipline-specific options and even researching non-discipline or skills-based options. So just to kind of allow you to understand that, obviously, as you know, science faculty is diverse. And what I've tried to do for this presentation is to kind of look at the different loosely grouped sections. So biology, earth and the environment, chemical and molecular sciences, and then numeracy and physical sciences. So the examples that I've chosen have kind of come from all of these three different sections. But I think for you to realize that, you know, what I'm going to be demonstrating to you, you'd be able to do for your own discipline, for your own sector that you might be interested in. So before we kind of look at the details of employability, I'm going to ask you to partake in a graduate matching exercise. So just to say, look, there are no right or wrong answers. And I'll reveal to you afterwards what the aim of this exercise actually is. But for our purposes today, what I'd like for you to do is you'll see the letters in the column on the left and the numbers in the column towards the right. Tokozele, who has an undergrad in microbiology and biotechnology, is not a board member or a lecturer. So what I want you to do is to take a few minutes to try to match the name of the person, or at least the letter, with the correct number on the right-hand side, with the correct position. So I'll give you about 2-3 minutes, and I'd like for you to type it in the chat. So you might say A matches up with 6, and so forth and so on. So I'm going to ask you to give it a go and write it in the chat for us, please. And remember, there's no wrong answer. Thanks, Holly. Thanks, Ntabising. So if you continue, write down that list of names and try to match the position that you think they might be in today. Okay, I'm giving you 30 more seconds. So I see some great combinations. 30 more seconds left. Okay, so I see there are some themes that are coming through. I see Tokozile is being matched with 4, and it kind of makes sense because she's in microbiology and biotech. What else is a theme? C5, someone has C5. Rebecca, oceanography, and okay, so that makes a lot of sense. Carbon calculated, she's a consultant there. Okay, so if I ask you guys to think about what the missing link is, so what other information would you have liked to have known about those names? So just to say these are all real life people, and most of them have graduated from UCT and they currently are working in those positions. But what would you have liked to know a little bit more about so that you could kind of match them better? So you're welcome to raise your hands and make it more interactive, or you're welcome to type it in the chat. I see Nokatula and Bongi are typing. Anyone wanting to raise their hand and unmute? Okay, so absolutely, Nokatula, what their passions are. So definitely passion, interest plays a role. Absolutely, I agree with you there. What else do you think? Absolutely, their first job out of uni. Opportunities that they took, yes. So I see some lovely ideas. What else? Maybe just another 1 or 2 other options. So that first job is key. It doesn't mean that you'll stay in your first job forever, but it can pivot, you know, where your career heads towards. Stephanie, I see you said other experiences they may have had, like internships, work experience while doing their degree. Absolutely. So all of you are absolutely on the right track. So let us reveal the letters and numbers that match. So Tokozile, who has done micro and biotech, is actually group head at ABSA of leadership, learning and talent. How interesting. Tina, who's done the mathematical stats, is the board member and lecturer. Rebecca, who's done oceanography and atmospheric science, independent consultant at Carbon Calculated. So that isn't that surprising because it's kind of still in her discipline, in her field. Setu, who's done chemistry and ocean and atmospheric science, is a media and communications consultant. Megan, who's done chemical and molecular science, she's the data scientist, and Tamlin is actually the director of Cape Biofarms. They're a bio startup tech company. So let's look at the missing information, and this is where it gets really interesting. So Tokozile, look, she's actually done her PhD in molecular and cell biology, and then she did a course in strategies for leadership. She then, she did a postdoc in the research, but her first job thereafter was as a consultant. And she always actually wanted to have a socioeconomic impact and nurture leadership. Hence, this is where she is today. Tina, interestingly, always loved education. So you can see she did her master's in stats and then her PhD in stats education. And she became a program coordinator at Ubuntu Education Fund, where she actually started tutoring grade 12 learners, which obviously cemented her love for teaching and learning, and hence her being a lecturer. Rebecca, I think she's the most obvious one. So she did her honours and her masters, and interesting in environmental law. Um, just something on Rebecca, she also worked for WWF, Worldwide Fund, um, also directly related in her field. Setu, I think I find the most interesting. So she has a skin condition, albinism, and she started a blog a very long time ago, which then grew to support people with albinism. And eventually, she actually launched her Love Your Skin organization, and that prompted her to actually go into journalism. Hence, she's a consultant, media and communications consultant today. Megan was the one that did chemical and molecular sciences, and she did her honors in molecular biology. And she's always, well, she found herself in instructional learning and design at Siyavula. And then at the same place, she then branched into learning, research, and analytics, which then lent itself to becoming a data scientist, using her skills from her postgraduate studies. And then Tamlin, also a very interesting story. She did her honors in medical biochem, and she did her master's. She started a PhD and then decided that academia actually wasn't for her. Took a very big step or decision into teaching English in Vietnam and Thailand for about 2 years. And after that, she came back to South Africa and started up her company, which is actually flourishing today. So it's really interesting to see these journeys, these career journeys that these graduates have undertaken. And so what is the aim of this exercise? What does it demonstrate? It demonstrates to us that your degree does not always equate to an obvious career or profession. There are obviously other factors that play a role in your life, like you've correctly said earlier, interests, your activities, your former experiences, courses that you've done, because you develop skills in all spheres of your life. And being aware of these skills opens up broader options to you. And you also need to know that you do not need to limit yourself to your discipline. I'm not sure if someone has their mic on, so please switch it off because we get feedback sound. So this brings us on to, what does it mean to then be employable? And you can see it's the shape of a key. So it's key aspects to employability, and we call it career edge. So the career is about career development learning. And what this means is exactly what you guys are doing here. You've attended an event, a webinar, so as to learn about your career. Or to understand how you can develop your journey with regards to your career. So please check out the My Career portal on our website. I'll show it to you a little bit later on. For other events, there are companies that come and have talks. There are events that we'll have in the future that would be really interesting for you to attend, so that you can develop your understanding of how to become more employable. Remember that having a fantastic CV, motivation letter, and being a great at interviewing is also important to be able to then open up those opportunities to you. The other part of career edge is the E, which is emotional intelligence, and definitely very important in the world that we're living in today, with being able to understand your own emotions and others and how to react to that. The D is about your degree. So obviously you'd develop your discipline knowledge, but you'll gain discipline-specific skills as well. And then your G is your generic skills, and this we like to call our transferable skills. So things like your communication skills, your teamwork ability, taking the initiative, for example. And then after that, the last E is your experience. So, any experience that you gain in any activity within your work, your life at large, will dictate, skills that you can develop. But all of this is almost meaningless if you don't stop and reflect and evaluate, firstly, where you've come from, where you're at currently, and where you are heading towards. And with regards to your self-efficacy, just believing that you can actually achieve your goals. Having that self-esteem and self-confidence is really important to opening up that door of employability. Stephanie, I see that you have a question. So you say that what are experiences they may have had? Oh, sorry, that was from that was from the previous session. I'm so sorry. I thought you added to the chat. So very important for us to understand these aspects of employability. So the next question we have to ask ourselves is, where do you actually develop these skills? And like I've said before, it is in all parts of what makes you you. So it's in work experience. It could be full-time, part-time, vac work. You could be working in your family business. You could have started up a little entrepreneurial company on the side. You could have, yeah, you could find yourself in any, even voluntary work adds to your skill set. And then undertaking any curricular activities. So any sporting or cultural events or activities, taking up leadership positions. So if you're in res, for those of you that are, they're going to be opening up student positions like dining hall monitor, and so forth. We are going to be having a webinar next week about taking up leadership events at UCT. Any religious involvement, community work, all counts to developing those skill sets. Hobbies and interests as well. So let's say that yes, you are doing science, but you're not doing computer science, but you're really interested in coding, and you've taken on an extra course for coding, for example, or you are into playing computer games where you have to implement strategies and collaborate with other team members. That is a way of developing collaboration skills or strategy, for example. Courses, extra courses, yes, and obviously your degree would add to your skill set. Now, knowing where to develop your skill set is one thing, but also knowing how to actually present this and identify, well, firstly, to identify those skills are important. And so what could be helpful to you, for those of you that don't know, on our website, careers.uct, if you click on the student tab and you go to considering your career options and clicking on identifying your skills, what is important is to know that there's a list. It's not exhaustive, but what I like about it is that if you were to click on any of these, so for example, decision making, it tells you the definition, gives you the definition, which I think is really important to understand. What does it mean to have decision making ability or skills? And then it also asks some questions, which they could ask you in an interview. But more than that, it starts to make you think about how would you answer those questions? And it starts to allow you to think of how that will be presented on your CV, because you always have to evidence those skills that you have. Another website that I like is a UK-based website. It's called Prospects. If you were to click on careers advice, and then what can I do with my degree? What it does is it has a whole list of your courses or majors. And for this presentation, I've clicked on mathematics. It tells you what it's about, but what we're wanting to zone in on is the skills, but it also gives you job options or titles. And sometimes it's not very obvious what to search for in terms of like discipline specific stuff. So all of this is not kind of translatable to our South African context, but it can help a little bit to aid your research. And then it gives you discipline-specific skills, but more so the website also then tells us about those generic or soft or transferable skills that you develop because of those majors that you've decided to choose or to take. So moving on from there, also looking at back to our career website, back to the students tab, looking at making applications. So we've spoken about developing your skills, how you can identify your skills, and importantly, how would you present it on your CV? And so if you were to go to Creating a Great CV, you'll see that there's a mini series which is great for you to watch. It's about 3 minutes each per episode, and it takes apart each and every part of a CV. So a really great resource. If you didn't know this, we also have these same resources on our Vula site if you are not accessing our website. Okay, so maybe let me pause and ask, do we have any questions thus far? Nope. Okay, so I'll continue. So, you may decide to work within your discipline. So like we said, using your academic degree, your knowledge and skills acquired. And this might also incorporate the field of academia. So you might want to become an academic. So for example, someone who's doing computer science may work as a software developer, or you might want to become a marine biologist if you've done the ocean and atmospheric science degree. However, you may want to use your softer skills or functional skills in the world of work. So the example that we can use here would be Megan Beckett. She was the data scientist, where she used her research skills and her job that she had to then become a data scientist. And so remember that you may not find your discipline-specific job immediately, and you may need to consider a stepping stone job first. And every experience provides a platform for you to develop your skills and build relationships that could actually grow your professional network. And also bearing in mind that you may want to enter the world of work, at some point return to postgraduate studies, because then knowing exactly where it is that you'd like to focus on. But remember that whatever you decide, being within your discipline or being in skills-based work is not going to be static. You can change from one to the other. Okay, so now we are going to be looking at how exactly are you going to be researching these options that are open to you. So we'll spend a little bit of time on the website again. I'll spend a little bit of time on LinkedIn. And just to let you guys know, for those of you that don't, there is a webinar, Maximizing LinkedIn, that goes into depth about how we can actually use LinkedIn to your advantage. And then we'll touch very briefly on other job search platforms. Okay, so back to our website. As you know, clicking on the Students tab, if you go to Considering Your Career Options, you'll see all the faculties listed. And so you'll obviously click on the Science faculty after clicking on Options with your degree. And once you click on a course or a major, so for the purposes of the webinar, I've chosen biology, it will have a drop-down tab. So you'll see professional bodies, sector insights, postgraduate study and research, and so forth. But what you'd need to do is, as an example, I clicked on professional bodies and associations, and what it did was it brought up professional bodies, one of them being the South African Council for Natural Scientific Professions. And again, I didn't realize this, but they actually advertise careers, so it might be well worth your time going in and checking to see what is there. Another way of looking for discipline-specific options would be going into sector insights. So that would be publications, for example. And you could click on any of those and you can see that there's a whole kind of list of different specialities that you might want to go into to see if there are any opportunities that might be advertised there. Okay, so another way that you could look for discipline-specific opportunities would be in our guide, specifically going to media and publications on our website. You can see on the left-hand side, it's published every year. Apart from the articles that there are, that are really interesting, you'll have an employer directory section. It's about 2/3 of the way in, and these employers have obviously paid UCT Careers to advertise, whether it's internships, bursaries, VAC work opportunities, full-time work. But what is nice is it's very easy for you to navigate, because on the right-hand side, you'll see which faculties they are actually recruiting from. And so a great way to kind of see specifically what it is that you might want to apply for. For those of you that don't know, My Career is a UCT portal only. So it means that you're going to have to use your student credentials to log on. But like I said in the beginning, part of aspects to employability would be career development. And so it's always recommended for you to check out events that might be relevant to you. And then also the job opportunities. So here you could be very specific or very broad depending on what you're looking for. So what I wanted to see was, I looked for examples for biology. There were only 2 opportunities available. One bird rehabilitator for SANCOB, and then a senior associate malaria vector control person for Clinton Health Access Initiative. So all of it may not be relevant for you to kind of go into, but it's well worth looking into just in case. Okay, so this brings us on to LinkedIn. And this is kind of just a taster of what LinkedIn can do for you. You could spend hours on LinkedIn looking at profiles. So for those of you that don't know, it's a social media platform for professionals. And there is an information resource on how to set up your profile. So despite the fact that you may still be a student at UCT, you are allowed to have a profile. But what it does is LinkedIn allows you firstly to look for jobs. But secondly, you can do research through LinkedIn by pulling up profiles of people working in a specific sector, seeing which organizations they may have worked at in the past, seeing where they are at currently, and then Googling that organization for opportunities. So it's a little bit of a roundabout way, but it's a great way to kind of discover organizations that you never knew existed before. So an example that I've looked for is microbiology. And there were lots of profiles that popped up, and I chose to go into Nicole Deploy. And so you could see that she has an undergrad from KwaZulu-Natal. She did micro and genetics, and then she went on to do her honors in microbiology. And then she did a short course in events management at UCT. But interestingly, she is now working at Unilever. And so you might want to hop onto their website and see what opportunities are there possibly for you. Another way of doing it would be to, if you've pulled up these people's profiles and you think, sure, this person looks really interesting, you can actually network with them. And so it means that you can send them a message and say, look, I am doing career research. Can we have a conversation? Because I'm really interested in your career journey. And the person can agree or not to meet up with you, to have a virtual chat about their career journey. And we call this informational interviewing. And there's a resource, again, on our website under students, under making applications, under interviews, and you'll find informational interviewing. So if you remember, when you were in grade 11, I think that students are asked to do job shadowing. So I think it might have been a while back for you, but informational interviewing is far more sophisticated because you can ask very pertinent questions to understand exactly what it takes to get into that role or to kind of navigate that career space that you are carving out for yourself. And it's a great way that at the end of that conversation, if you felt that it went, you liked what you heard, you could say, can I leave my CV with you in case there are opportunities? So it doesn't mean that the person that you are having that session with can create a job for you, but what they can do is they can actually alert you to opportunities that might become available in the future. So it's a soft way of actually networking and finding those very specific roles that you are looking for. So next this is just to show you kind of what else I did. I looked at, I used LinkedIn and I typed in chemistry. So let's see what that does. And so it pulled up Pule, and he's at a company called Mintech. He's a scientist there. It pulled up Gurley, and she is a chemist at the fertilizer place. And it pulled up Tlao Chokwe, who's a scientist at Rand Water. And so if you didn't know about these companies before, you could then go and Google and see actually what opportunities are there for students with a chemistry background. I also did this for environmental science because I thought that was interesting. And so I pulled up Sean, who is a managing director at a company called WSP in Africa. And so if you don't know who they are, it's well worth Googling if you're into environmental science. Pisile also has an environmental science background, and she works at Zach Mine. And then Eben is a founder and director of the organization. And what is interesting is, you know, you could reach out to them and have those conversations, or simply go onto Google and check out those companies to see what opportunities they might exist for you. And then looking at the job search option on LinkedIn, I used physics again, just to illustrate. There were 119 results for jobs. Not all of them are going to be relevant to you and appropriate to you. But just as an example, it pulled up an analyst at Quantium Health. And what is interesting here is that, you know, they talk about the experience that you need. But interestingly, they're looking for a background in mathematics, biostats, statistics, physics, or any related discipline. And so you could see whether you met the requirements for that job or not. So that's another way of kind of looking for those opportunities. What about online job searches? So you could use Facebook. Perhaps Instagram is a little bit more for the creative fields. You could use Twitter and Google as well. But on the right-hand side, there are useful job portals for those of you that might be interested. And for our international students, devnetjobs.org is a great platform to use. And then for those that are not wanting to work for run-of-the-mill corporate organizations, you might find NGO Pulse really, really helpful. Some great portals to delve into. Okay, so this brings us to our non-discipline skills-based work options. I would like to just pause and check back with you guys. Any questions thus far? Okay, so I'll continue. So it's important to note that graduate positions, so positions geared towards students starting out in their career, are often open to any educational background. And like we said before, you have to be able to identify and present your skills well in a job application and interview. And just to kind of say to all of you that when you do see these opportunities being presented, and you've crafted your CV as well as your motivation letter, please feel free to come to us with the job advert as well as your CV and letter, and ask us to have a review so that we can kind of target it as best that we can to the application, because that is the one way that you'll be shortlisted for a job. So let's look at the guide again, our portal and LinkedIn. So this is just an example, like I showed you before from the career service guide, the employer directory section. You have the IQ business, and look on the left, you can see that they are actually looking at most of the faculties apart from health sciences. And you can see that they say specifically they are not degree specific, and they'll accept most students, which is quite interesting. And then looking at our My Career Jobs portal, I think when you start to broaden your options, the term that you use to search for is really important. I kept it very broad and I typed in intern, and so it was completely not specific at all. And as you can see, one example that I've chosen to present to you here is a sales manager for Procter and Gamble. And you can see, they talk through the responsibilities like developing relationships with customers, creating reports, collaborating with other teams. But when you look at the specific qualifications, they mention a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, 0 to 1 year's work experience, and they're looking for leaders. So think about, cultivating that, taking on leadership roles when possible, thinking about that collaborating skills, analytical thinking skills. And so when you start to apply, your CV needs to speak to exactly the type of candidate that they're looking for. So that's one example. Another example that came up for internship was a grad test consultant from REPL Group. And so it describes the kind of the job description. But what are they looking for? They're looking for people who have any STEM related degree. And so they're really not fussy about the background. And they talk about the other kind of advantages, like possibly having some experience in the retail sector, being willing to learn, and having interests outside of university. Again, for those of you that are just starting out at UCT, to become involved outside of your academic field in anything that takes your interest. Okay, and then, if you're wanting to keep it broad on LinkedIn, I simply typed STEM and came across Puma Energy Early Careers Program. And here they're obviously looking for any person who's graduating this year in science, technology, engineering, or maths with communication skills, having an aptitude for numbers and analytical skills, and also looking for extramural activities for those that have been involved in that. So you can see that there are some opportunities. And again, you can play around with those search words depending on exactly what it is that you're looking for. And so this brings us to the end. So in summary, remember that your skills are developed through your degree. And any other additional activities that you may be involved in. So I'm encouraging you to, take on being part of a society, take up leadership roles when they become available, do some social outreach in your community, because all of that develops your skill set. And when you compete in the job market, it makes you stand out from everyone else. Remember that career development learning is part of employability. So it means that you look out for any kind of events that might add to that development in your career. Understanding your CV, understanding how to be good at an interview, for example. Bearing in mind that your first job after graduating should be seen as a stepping stone, because careers develop over time. It doesn't just happen in an instant. And if you are to think of your career as a journey, you would be open to and ready to consider your options and opportunities. And so it's with that that I would like to say thank you for attending, and it is question time. So I'm going to stop presenting and switch on my camera. Yvonne, I see your question. You say, let's say you are helping your community. Let's say in terms of mentoring and tutoring. How am I to present this on my CV? So that's a good question, Yvonne. And what I would like to encourage you to do is watch the mini series that I showed you on our careers website. So I'll just use an example. So let's say you are mentoring students and you are tutoring. And you are heavily involved in your academic program. You could take out of that what skills you're developing. So just, which is very generic and transferable, it's time management skills. So if you can demonstrate that, you are handing in your assignments on time, you are tutoring students on a weekly basis, and you are mentoring them, you're developing the time management skills so that you can be efficient. You could, if they're looking for someone who has, let's say, they're looking for someone with excellent communication skills. So you take your tutoring and you think about, sure, I am needing to engage with students from diverse backgrounds. I'm needing to explain concepts that are complex and I have to break it down into a simple way of explaining it to them. I'm having to do presentations, and so that is developing different parts of your communication skills. So it really depends on how you present it on your CV. And again, I challenge you that if you're struggling after watching that mini series and you struggle to put it onto your CV, come and have a session with an advisor, book a session, and we'll do a one-on-one, which is really helpful, especially if you have an opportunity that you've seen advertised and you've tried to target your CV to that application. Once you get the hang of the targeting and the focusing of your CV as well as your cover letter, it will really help you to be shortlisted. So I hope that answers your question, Yvonne. Any other questions? You're most welcomed. Any other questions? So while you're thinking about questions, if you don't mind, we have a feedback form, which I'm going to pop the link in the chat. So please feel free to take your time to fill it out. It's not many questions. It'll be quick. Any other questions? This is your opportunity, guys, to ask. Maybe I'll take this opportunity. I mentioned that there's a career conversation on Thursday. Please check it out if you are interested in environmental sciences, in sustainability, climate change, EGS. Yeah, it's going to be a really good session, I'm sure. Kurhula, with regards to using LinkedIn via UCT, how long after graduating do we have access to? Okay, so that is a good question. So look, LinkedIn, you have regardless. Okay, whether you are at UCT or elsewhere, whether you become a professional in the workspace or not. What doesn't become accessible to you when you graduate is LinkedIn Learning. And that is something that's a whole other conversation. And if you didn't know this, if you are a student at UCT, you have access to LinkedIn Learning, which is the equivalent for those of you who knew lynda.com before. There are thousands of little short courses that you can explore and then present on your profile on LinkedIn. And so well worth checking out. But access to LinkedIn is, within your professional capacity. And then Yvonne is asking, are they free? So LinkedIn is free. LinkedIn Learning is free when you are a UCT student. But what I do know is that sometimes it makes it a little bit tricky when you network and reach out to people. And there's an option where you can have a premium account and that is paid, but otherwise it is free. So it is a free service. And then for those of you that don't know, even after graduating from UCT, you are welcome to access Careers Service website for job opportunities, to book appointments with advisors, attend events up to 3 years post-graduation, which I think a lot of students don't know. So please take advantage of that offer. What else? I'll put into the chat where you can book. And like I said, if you are wanting a CV review, you are welcome to book with us. But for Friday, the sessions will only be open on Wednesday. Okay, and then there's a question about mock interviews. So, okay, so yes, so there are two ways to answer that question, Kahula. The one is if you book with an advisor, you can choose interview preparation. And especially if you have a short timeline and you've been shortlisted for an interview, we then do role play where we can then ask you questions, you answer them, and we feed back to you. We also have an event that is happening in September called Virtual Mock Interview Program, which is something very different. And I'll encourage you to look out on My Career for that. It is actually where we have organizations that send employers to actually come and interview you so you can practice your skills with a real live employer. That is what they do for an HR person, and they will then feed back to you. So it's a great way of learning. So most welcome to do that. Okay, you said something about the career service Vula site. Is that something we can be added to? Okay, so I'm going to let's demonstrate it. So I'm going to share my screen. And that's the entire screen. And I'm going to go to my Vula site quickly. So I know sometimes, okay, I'm in. So let me just collapse this so you get to see. So you can see this is the landing page of Vula. You can see it's under student services. You see SRC, careers, varsity news, student support, it's all there. So if you were to click on careers, it says visit our Vula site or visit our website. If you click on Vula, I would say most of our resources are actually on the left. So you'll see CV resources. If you click on that, you'll see, if you scroll down, all of the episodes of the mini-series. I don't want to make you dizzy. You'll see cover letters and LinkedIn, and then the interview section is there as well. So yeah, you're well worth kind of navigating it. It's mirrored by our page, our web page. The other thing that I know a lot of students don't know, and I'm taking this opportunity to share it with you, is if I scroll down, all the way down, you'll see right at the bottom, there's a YouTube channel. So what is great is you can actually see some of the webinars that we've had. There's the Finding Work series, Maximizing LinkedIn. So you may want to kind of hop in and watch that. And then some of our past career conversations are there as well, which is quite cool. And so that is not collated in any way. But if you were to go back to the careers website page, media and publications, and you go to, yeah, some of our recordings are here. And what is really great is the careers uncovered section as well. If you're into technology or you're wanting to consult, you can see accounting and law. Okay, maybe not those, but well worth jumping in because it's where organizations have come and spoken about those sectors. So really, really great. Okay, so I'm going to stop there and come back to you. Any questions? Anything else? Okay, so Holly, amazing. Okay, you are most welcomed. Fantastic. Yvonne, is it true that it's easier to find work with a postgrad as opposed to having an undergrad? Okay, so Yvonne, that's a very good question. And okay, so I cannot lie and say, okay, undergrad, postgrad, it doesn't matter. Having a postgrad does give you an edge. Absolutely. However, saying that, if you cast your mind back to when I showed you the career, the key to employability, that it's not just your degree that makes you employable. There are so many kind of pieces of the puzzle that have to fit together to get you employed. And I think once you kind of understand that, you can present yourself in a favorable light every time you apply to an organization, so that you can kind of stand the best chance of being selected or shortlisted. But definitely, I can tell you this, that on next week, it's either Tuesday or Wednesday, we're going to be chatting about postgraduate studies and what the opportunities are in terms of what it opens up to you in terms of your skill sets as well. So, if you're interested in that, you're most welcome to attend as well. But I think, at the end of the day, it is your decision. And that is why it's great if you can find VAC work or internships within your discipline, so you get a bit of a taster, because with postgrad studies, it's nice to know exactly where it is that you could see yourself, either in your discipline or you could kind of jump into a different faculty, and you're needing kind of to go into it with your eyes wide open, if I can put it that way. So thanks for your question. Any other questions before we say goodbye? We have 6 more minutes with each other. So once again, I'm going to ask you, for those that are still here, to please fill in our feedback form. Yeah, and hoping to see some of you on Thursday at our career conversation. Okay, so we'll wait a few more minutes. You're most welcome, Bungi. You take care now. You're welcome, Ntabiseng.